Oh, you can use it down.
Why can't we reproduce more plastic?
Yeah, refill.
This is filter water, right? So everybody should be happy with it. Somebody insists we have the water. Klaus.
Yeah.
I have a problem. Yeah. No, not a PDF.
Are you boycotting the evil empire? No, the Microsoft.
Where you give permission. Yes, absolutely. Just give room for homosexuals. Anywhere in that sense.
We are five.
And for commercial profitability and protection. Where should I? In the space. We three people are self-owned. As and when I find people are not.
So, so the idea is it will give you cable now so when you go up. So when you give your presentation, you go up there and do it. And then maybe we can sit there. That's what we have to from our but I'm just going to give my presentation from here. Then we have questions and everything. Or maybe should we have after every talk, we should have a discussion. So you don't have to be the materials. I'm very good at that. Representation yeah, 15. So 15 minutes you have. I usually tell when I stand up in time is over. Do you want to have any sign that you will come together? Okay, then you have something. You have we've been 1 minute thing. No, we don't have that. I love that. And when I stand up, it means your time is out. When I stand next to you,
everyone's signatures.
No, I'm not violent. I'm not violent. Yeah. Should I get it? Should I get it? 5 minutes? Okay, 5 minutes. Is it on 5? Okay. I hope your headphones are starting. Please don't take any calls when you are speaking. Once at conference, we actually did instructions. But I wasn't my own. In the back, let's move the front so that the comments don't have to be so that was the microphone. What are you doing? Maybe we have that's fine. You have to speak into the mic because they're recording. Okay, then we can start. Yeah. Then if you want,
You can call a person in the white. You can put the laptop.
what's the order you want?
You can put the other one for Sarita.
I can start. Klaus, Annapurna. I think that's. I have a. And Swarup. So when I say Annapurna, please don't
I go first.
You want to go first? Okay, then we.
I don't have. That's why I go first.
Yeah.
I think we can
Get started. So,
thank you
so much for coming. On behalf of the Center for Public History at Srishti and the archives at NCBS, I welcome you to this public panel discussion on the public lives of objects. This is part of the Winter School in Public History, the first Winter School in Public History that the Center for Public History is organizing. My job is relatively easier today. My job is to introduce Roland, who is going to take on these proceedings. So thank you so much to all of you for coming through here. Just to give you some heads up, there will be a panel discussion with the people on stage who will be introduced by Roland. There will be tea after this in the garden just across. And if any of you are interested in visiting an archive, you can talk to one of us, me or Neha or anyone else from NCBS, and we'll be glad to take you through. So Roland is the Associate Professor of the History of Science and Technology at IIT Madras. He studied physics and the history of science at the University of Oldenburg, Germany, and the Norwegian University of Science and Tech in Trondheim. From 2007 to 2014, Roland taught history of science at the University of Regensburg in Germany. His research interests include a variety of different things, in particular the history of the physical science and engineering in the 19th and 20th century, scientific instruments, a particular interest in the history of the mechanics of sound, on which he gave a public lecture in the Archives series last year. Some of you were there for that one. And his publication, there's a book on that which is called The Age of Electroacoustics, Transforming Science and Sound, published by MIT in 2016. And more recently, he's also been working on the history of the Indo-German collaboration and, most importantly, from my perspective, setting up the IIT Madras archives, which is coming up very soon. So, Roland, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you very much, Mehmet. I also have to say, obviously, why I might be here. I've actually changed sites. I didn't used to be an archive guy. I used to be like an object guy. And with Universeum, European Association for University Museums and Collections, we've been working very intensively on what's been called object history. Klaus has been briefly involved with that as well. Yes, I was asked to give a brief introduction into the topic of the social life of objects, or objects and history as well. And yes, every historian knows the relationship of historians as a discipline with objects is actually rather strange, right? So it's rather difficult one. As historians, we usually, as somebody has pointed out, chewing and rechewing things, right? We really love text. And we are giving priority to the written word. Obviously, there are disciplines like archaeology that deal with objects, that have dealt with objects ever since the beginning. But we also know that there is a strange relationship between archaeologists and historians, and there's usually priority given to text. That's actually true for most of the humanities and social sciences. We consume text and we produce text, right? There has been what has been called the material turn. There have been a lot of terms. History of science has an history. In general, there has been like the philological terms where people look at images, and now we also have the material turn. I would still say, if you look at the material turn, most people who talk about objects are very, very important. What they actually do is they still talk about objects, they write about objects. They don't really engage with objects. Right? One of my colleagues from History of Science have actually been saying it in your words, you're just taking the linguistic turn further. Right, like you're basically still talking, writing, looking at text, and one of the reasons I see with that is actually that a lot of scholars, they're not really trained to look at objects. Right? Like there is really no methods to engage with objects, and a lot of people, I would even say, trained in the classical way with text, they probably would have a lot to lose, and that's to say it a little bit provocatively as well. So we don't really have in the humanities, we don't have the methods of what we call, we organized Canada reading architecture, like to use it as a metaphor, to actually historians to read objects or to write history from objects, right? More so in humanities departments, we don't have, like here at NCBS, we don't have labs, we don't have workshops, right? Like we don't have the infrastructure to do that. So you would really need that. And obviously, as all disciplines, you would need a very sound methodology. In some disciplines, that's there. Obviously, in archaeology, we have a very sound methodology how to write history from objects. But still, it's more like it's not really in mainstream. It hasn't really reached mainstream history, right, and historians. At the same time, and that's why we have disciplines like archaeology. Most of human history is actually not accessible through text. So it's amazing. If you look at the long thousands of years of history, human history, only a small part of it is accessible through written sources. And even for the period where we have written sources, and that's actually very true for India, it leaves out large sections of the society. Majority of sections of the majority of history. A lot of history of Indian history. And we just had an example. In our presentation today is actually written from European sources. So I mean that's why colonial history is such a big thing. You basically actually do written, right? Like you go to the British Library, you have the India Company, or you have older sources, you have like Jesuit sources, your Portuguese sources, you have Dutch sources to write actually Indian history. And even when it comes to us archival sources, these are limited, and we all know at the stages that we are involved in this. There is actually a rather limit of written sources available in India. I mean, archives are not, and again, we today. Archives in India in general not very nice, not very easy to access. So there would be a huge need for engaging with objects as sources for history writing, right? Other academic sources, other academic disciplines away from the humanities and social sciences, there are actually even in some of the humanities and social sciences, if you look at art history or anthropology, there are actually they actually produce collections, and they have been using objects very much. For me, for example, when I studied the history of engineering education at the Technical University of Dresden, that a lot of these disciplines were actually started around object collections and workspaces, laboratories. I just have actually a very different kind of approach to text. When I entered the history of science, I actually entered it through like Klaus' experimental approach, where we did not only read text, we did not only read archival sources, but we actually went to the lab and did experiments, because that's what you as scientists would be doing, right? So if you actually look around, and this to my own activities, you can go to specifically European collections, but I think there's also scope for that if you go to Indian universities, Indian teaching institutions, where you find that they actually do have a lot of collections. We can make use of these kind of collections. One of my colleagues has actually talked about the collections in universities as kind of dark masses. Universities which are extremely and they're large repositories of objects. How can we access? How are we doing this? Some people have developed some methods, and also many at universities. There have been some moves to have these kind of object laboratories in humanities departments. One of the ways to deal with objects is analytical methods and interpretative methods. I just want to mention here one of the more known protocols is the Winterthur protocol in American computational studies. How you can actually analyze and study and what kind of questions you can address to objects. But then you can also do experimental history. The replication method, doing experiments, would be one of these experimental methods for archaeology, but then there have also been a lot of questions addressed how much is sound method. So how do we, also what's very important, how do we get kind of the people and the social relations and the social practices, not only the objects, but how do we get the people, social relations and social practices embedded in the object? Or how do we write through by objects, how do we write history of people, right? So I would also urge, and when we have this discussion, we also have to get to a different understanding of objects, not as products, but really as processes and its practices, right? Like, and we can look at, I mean, there have been people looking like kind of at the life history of objects, right? Like, where you really bring a lot of the people, you can have also things like the kind of materials where these objects came from, and the people and the history of people that have been involved. But that can all be retrieved, or that should be all retrieved through the object, right? But beyond writing history and using objects as history, this is also called for telling our histories in a different way. Specifically, not telling our histories through text, but in other ways. And then you can say, yes, that's what museums have ideally should have been doing, or have been doing, whether they do it in a good way, ever since the beginning, telling stories through objects, through collections, through exhibitions, through interactions with the public. But for historians, it's a very new thing. I mean, we are usually used to the linear text, like telling a history through a linear text. It's very different to tell a history through an exhibition, for example, which is more three-dimensional. So there we can actually learn a lot from artists, from designers, and from architects. But we should also be bringing in people. We should be bringing in other people. We also discussed this in our workshop in the last days. These kind of places should be more participatory. There should be hands-on and minds-on, right? Like come there, and it shouldn't be kind of authoritative history, but it should be the exhibition should actually be raising questions, right? Like history should be raising questions rather than trying to give all the answers, right? Like we've been talking about these aspects of curating your exhibitions with your visitors, and I think Venkat is doing some of that right now. That's not right. Or trying to do that. Obviously, we have to ask ourselves where do we stand in India, right? Like, and look at the average, government museum, right? I think about like the in Chennai, one of the major museums. We still very far in most museums, like in most archives, most museums, also very far away. And we have to ask ourselves, are we as museums and academic institutions, are we doing a good job here, right? Are we not doing a good job? What has to be done? Or maybe we also have to find different answers in India. Replicate everything from what's done in Europe, but I also want to ask, if we talk about like public history and objects in the public, who's actually the public, right? Like, and in Europe, you always think about the public as some kind of more or less homogenic group, homogenic background, right? Which you can talk about, like the educated citizen. Obviously, that's not really true in India, right? Like, who's your public? There are a lot of very different kind of publics in society. It's not really like that. So that's a big rather question that I have answers for these kind of things. And with this introduction, I want to stop and give over to our panelists, and I would like to start with Annapurna Manitipudi, who has been working extensively on handloom weaving. Everybody knows that very much. She was a visiting postdoctoral fellow at the Max Planck History of Science in Berlin, and holds a PhD from the University of Maastricht, where she has been working with Biker, who is one of the kind of very eminent persons of science and technology studies. So, please, Annapurna.
So some of you have been hearing a lot from some of us. So I will try to make it less painful. So what I would like to talk about is a topic that has been kind of being discussed a lot in the last 2 days, in the workshop on reconstructions. So
while we've heard about reconstruction as a museum practice, it kind of got me thinking about where
where
exactly we
exactly we
use
use
this
this
practice.
practice
We
in at
practice
least
as
as
somebody
somebody
working
working
in
in
an
an
NGO.
NGO. I
I
could
relate
relate to
many of
many
the
of the
um,
um,
impulses that
impulses
made
that
this kind of
made this
reconstruction
kind
of
of
scientific
reconstruction of
instruments.
scientific instruments. So
It seemed like a very
it
nice
seemed like a very
frame
nice
to
frame to
describe some of
use
the
to
work we've
describe
been
some of
doing.
the work that we've
But
been
what
doing.
I'd like to do is
But
just
what
tell a
I'd like
short
to do is just
series
tell a
of
short series of
stories.
stories.
People with some of the
People with some of the
characters that I worked
characters
with
that
in
I
the
worked
last
with in the
25
last
years.
25 years.
So,
So,
Usama, the person that
Usrama,
I
the
worked with
person
the
that I've
longest
worked with for the longest amount of
she
time,
came
she
back from England in
came back from England in her
40s. She was a
mid
jeweler
40s. She was a
and she wanted
jeweler
to work with
and
craftsmen.
she wanted to
She
work
had
with
this yen to
craftspeople.
find
And she
out
had
what was
this yen to
happening
find
in
out
the
what was happening in
craftsperson's
the
world in India. She had
craftsperson's
been away
world
from
in
many
India.
years.
She had been away for many
So
years and she
she
wanted to
gathered a
find out.
bunch
So
of
she gathered a
us
bunch of
around her who were
us
young
around her who
idealists,
were
engineers,
young idealistic engineers
professionals who
and
also wanted to,
professionals who also
were
wanted
willing to
to,
go along the journey with
were
her.
willing to go along the journey with her.
One of the stories that
One
she
of the
told very
stories that
early
she
on
told
was
very
the
early
story
on
of the
was
Kunche
the
Erukula
story of the
community.
Kunche Erukula community.
And
And
this
this
community
community
was
was
a
the
community that
community that
used to
used to
make the
make the
brushes
brushes
that
that
did the sizing.
did the
If
sizing.
you know
So
anything
if you
about
know
hand
anything
weaving, then
about
you know
hand
that you have
weaving,
to
then you
apply
know that you have
starch
to
to the
apply
yarn
starch on the
so that it
cotton
doesn't
yarn
break when
so
you are
that it
weaving.
doesn't break when
That
you are
actually gives
weaving.
the
And
strength
that
to the
actually
yarn for
gives
it
the
to be
strength to the
woven.
yarn for it to
So
be
there were
woven.
these
So there were
people would
these
make the
people would
brushes
make
that
the
would apply
brushes
the
that would
starch
apply the
on the
starch
warp.
on the warp.
And the story
And the
was
story
that she
was that
told
she
was that
told was
they
that
used to travel
they
from
used to
village to
travel from
village,
village to
but they
village
couldn't
so
safely
they
carry
couldn't
money.
safely carry
So
money.
the saying
So
was that
the
they hid their
saying
gold
was
in
that
the
they hid their
brushes.
gold in the brushes.
But
But
what was
what was
striking about the way
striking
she
about
told
the
the
way she
story
told
was
the
that
story was that
nobody
nobody
would
would
actually
actually open the
open the
brushes to
gold
look for the
inside
gold inside
because if they
because
did,
if
they
they
didn't know
did,
how to
they
put
didn't
it
know
back.
how to put it back
The brush
together.
was
And
more
the brush
precious
was
than the
more
brush in the
precious as a
inside.
brush than the gold inside.
So it
So it
spoke about
spoke about
this.
this.
What it
What
kind
it
of
kind of
made me think of
made
was
us think
this
of is that
huge,
there's this huge,
different
different
communities, so
communities so
specialized.
specialized that you could have one whole community that just made the brushes.
They
And they
had
were
this
they
rather
had
equal
this rather
relationship,
equal relationship, which
economic
was
and social,
economic and
and there was
social,
respect for
and
that
there was
person.
respect for that person's
And
craft.
this is this
And
kind
this was
of
this kind of
very
very
ideal world
ideal world
we wanted
that
to
we wanted
reconstruct
to
when we started
reconstruct
working.
when we started working.
So,
So,
Martin Mohan
Martin
Rao, who's the
Ramohan Rao,
union
who is
leader,
the
who
union
works
leader,
equally
who
with
works
weavers and
equally with
farmers
weavers
in
and
the early
farmers in the
90s,
early
came
90s, came
to Uzrama's house. He
Uzrama's
heard that
house.
she
He'd
was
heard
working
that she
with
was working with
handlooms, and he was a union
handlooms, and
leader.
he was a
So he
union
came.
leader. So he
And he
came
said,
and he
what are you
said,
doing
"What
for
are you doing for
weavers?
weavers?
They're committing
They're
suicide.
committing
So this is the
suicide." So
early
this is the
90s.
early
So
90s.
she looked
So
at him
she
and
looked at
said,
him and said,
what can I
what
do?
can I do? I
It's not
mean,
my job
that's not
to.
my job to,
And then he said, no, you
And then
have
he
to
said,
do
no, you have to
something.
do something.
And
And
that's how we
that's how
started
we
working
started working with actually actively marketing
and
Weavers products.
very
And
soon after,
very
the
soon
crisis
after,
then
the
spread to
crisis
the
then spread to
farmers,
the
especially the
farmers,
cotton
especially the
farmers.
cotton farmers.
Huge. And it's
Huge.
come back
And
now
it's come
again
back
in the
now
last
again in the
year.
last
We've heard
few
about
years. We've
a lot
heard
of
about a lot of
farmer suicides,
farmer
but
suicides,
also in
but
the 90s
also
that
in the
was a.
90s, that was a.
So
So
she
she
actually
actually does a
does a
lot
lot of
of
historical
historical
reading. I
reading.
don't know for
I
what
don't know for
reason,
what
but
reason,
she
but
goes back into
she
the
goes
archive.
back into the
Seems
archives
to
and she
find it
seems to
stimulating
find
and
it
interesting to
stimulating and
actually go
interesting
into
to actually go into
dusty
those
spaces and
dusty
read
spaces
those.
and read those. And one of the
One of
things
the
that
things
she
that
had
she had extensively
extensively
reading
been
about
reading about was that
was there used to be
there
called
used to
short
be called
staple
short
cotton wool,
staple
which
cotton
got
wool, which
converted to
got
long
converted
staple
to
when
long
we
staple
moved
when
from
we
hand
moved
spinning to
from
mill
hand
spinning.
spinning to mill spinning.
So
So
she said,
she
well,
said, well, can we
can we
reconnect the weavers
reconnect
and the
the weavers and the farmers? Now
farmers?
everything is
Because
going
now
through
everything is
large
going through the
mills,
large mills,
and cotton has
and
become a
cotton has become a
world
commodity,
commodity,
a
which
world
is creating
commodity,
a
which is
problem both
creating
for
a
the farmer
problem
and the
both for the
weaver. So
farmers
can
and the
connect
weavers. So can we connect it
using small
using
machines.
small
And the
machines.
thing that
And
we
the thing
learned
that
from the
we
past
learned from the past was that you couldn't, the individual women's spinning had been the bottleneck because of which
Manchester
Mills could replace,
they just
spun faster in the beginning, and that's how it disrupted this yarn supply to the handloom
So the
business.
first thing
So
that
the
she
first
thought was
thing
that,
that
okay,
she
let's
thought
make
was that,
slightly
okay, let's make
smaller machine.
slightly smaller
We want
machines.
to hand
We want
spinning,
to
we
hand
make a
spinning.
machine
We'll
that
make
will
a
work to
machine that
scale.
will work to
So that
scale.
many
For that
farmers,
many
that many
farmers, that
laborers,
many
and then you have a
laborers, and
machine
then
that
you have a machine
it was
that
a kind of a
it was a kind of a technological
innovation. And the
innovation.
basis of
And
that,
the basis
interestingly,
of that,
was that she
interestingly,
found
was that she found
that
that
you used
if you
to, in
used
order to
in
send the
order to send
cotton
the
to
cotton
Manchester, you
to
used to bale
Manchester,
it.
you used to bale it.
But now,
But
even
now,
when the
even
cotton
when the
was moving
cotton was
only 3
moving only
kilometers,
3
you were still
kilometers, you were still
and
baling
the
it.
biggest
And the
expense
biggest
in the
expense
spinning
in
unit
the
is the
spinning
unbaling.
unit is the unbaling of that
So
cotton.
these small
So these
machines that she
small
started
machines that
working
she
with
started working with
basically did away
basically
with
did
both the
away with
baling and
both the baling and
that
the
already
unbaling. That
reduced
already
huge amount
reduced
of
a huge
cost. It was
amount of
a
cost,
very
and it became a
critical
very
point to reduce the
critical point
cost.
to reduce the cost.
So this is a
So
kind
this
of
is
a
a kind of a
historical past
historical
that she
past that
invoked.
she invoked.
Now, in
Now,
order
in
to
order to
make this
make this
fabric, which
fabric,
was
which was
going to be
going to be
quite
quite
coarse, it
coarse,
was
it
not
was
going
not
to be
going to
the
be the
fine
fine
fabric that
fabric
people
that people were now
used to.
used to.
So it was going to
It
be
was going to
quite
be
thick.
quite
In
thick.
order to
In order
sell
to
it,
sell it, she decided
we were all
we were all
positive.
positive.
You know,
Then, let's try and see if we can bring back natural dyes to give it a character.
So
And there what she invoked and which kind of worked was the idea of memory, because she brought back this very
image of
strong
the indigo
image of
blue
the indigo
that used
blue
to
that
be
used to be
available,
available,
and
and
it's called
it was called
Chandrakali. None of
Chandrakali,
us had
and none
seen
of
it,
us had seen it.
but
But
the
the
word
word
Chandrakali, which is
Chandrakali, which is
the flower of the
flower
night,
of the night,
the moon,
of the moon,
evoked all kinds
evoked
of
all kinds of
very,
very
you know,
you know
nostalgic feelings for
nostalgic
something that
feelings for
was lost,
something
and
that
we
was
all wanted
lost,
to
and we all
grasp it.
wanted to
So
grasp it.
we all
So
went
we all
looking for
went
that
looking
blue,
for that
and
blue, and
that's a different
that's a
story. But
different
then we
story. But
found
then we
one
found
surviving
one surviving indigo dyer who was able to.
memory,
So
and it
memory
was very, very
was a
powerful
very,
tool to
very
then bring
powerful
back
tool
the
to then
past.
bring back the past into the
And of
present.
course, we had
And
the
of course, we
third
had
group,
the
a
third group,
very powerful
a
group
very
of
powerful group
craftspeople
of craftspeople
who
who had
continued to
who
carry the knowledge
continued to
of the
carry
past
the
in their
knowledge of
current
the
practice.
past in their current
So this
practice.
was the
So
third
this was the
partner,
third
that it was a
partner,
different
that it was
kind
a
of
different
past
kind of
practice that we were
past
able to
practice that we
mobilize.
were able to mobilize.
And
And
between
between
the three
the
kinds
three
of
kinds of
memories, we were
memories,
able
we
to
were able to
reconstruct a
reconstruct
new
this new
product called
product
Malka.
called Malka.
Now,
Now,
this
there was,
you might
you
think that
might think
we
that
tried to
we
make some
tried to
kind of
make some kind of authentic
we didn't,
product.
because the
We
machines
didn't,
were
because the
new.
machines were
Also
new.
in the
Also, in
beginning,
the
there were
beginning,
lots
there
of
were lots of
experiments with
experiments with
things like
things
using
using
electronic
electronic
controls.
controls.
So some
So some
experiments worked,
experiments
some
worked,
experiments
some
didn't
experiments
work. And
didn't
now it's
work.
a
And now it's
well-working
a
system that
well-working
does quite
system that
well.
does quite well.
And
And
the
the
relationships have
relationships
been
have been
formed
formed
between
between
some
some
farmers.
farmers.
It's
It's
still
still
a
a
tiny
tiny
experiment.
experiment.
The tiny
Tiny
NGO
NGO
running that,
running that.
the
The
product is
product
now
is now
quite well
quite well
known.
known. People know Malka.
Wear
People who
Malka
wear
love it.
Malka love it.
Um,
Um,
so the
so
question
the
is, what
question
did
is,
we
what
reconstruct?
did we reconstruct?
And looking
And
back now,
looking back
after
now,
25
after
years,
25 years,
I think
I
one of
think
the
one of
important
the
things
important
that we were
things
able
that
to do,
we were
because
able
we
to
made
do,
these new
because we made
connections,
these new connections,
when
is
the
that
challenge
when the
came from the
challenge
market for
came from the
organic
market for
product,
organic product, for
we were
example,
able to go back. We were able to go back to the
we were
short
able to go
staple.
back to the short staple
So
cotton.
some of
So
the
some of the
farmers have now
farmers have
been
now been
have shown
have
interest
shown
in
interest
growing that
in
short staple.
growing that
And
short
these
staple
machines are
cotton,
actually
and these
capable of
machines are
slow
actually
spinning.
capable of slower spinning.
So
So
we can bring
we
those
can
back.
bring those
Now
back.
that is
So that
something
is
definitely
something
back from the
definitely
past, but
back from the
also new,
past, but
because
also new, because this whole thing of
it's
organic
quite a new
is quite
trend
a
in that
new
sense.
trend in that sense.
As I said, the
As I
product
said, the
itself is
product
new,
itself is new,
even though it
even though
evokes
it
a sense
evokes
of
a
the
sense of the
past.
past. Malka is
Completely invented.
completely invented.
Malka comes from
Malka
Malmal,
comes
which
from
is very
malmal,
fine
which
cotton,
is
and
very
khadi,
fine
which is
cotton, and khadi, which is very
Malka.
small.
So
So
it's a
malka, so
completely
it's a
new product.
completely new product.
And
And
I think
I
though
think
to
though
end,
to end,
the thing
the
that we
thing that
really
we really
reconstructed was
reconstructed was knowledge.
knowledge about
Knowledge about
spinning.
spinning.
And
And
recently there's been a
recently there's
crisis
been
in
a
the
crisis in the
organization because the
organization,
people
because the
who
people who
were running it found the market too oppressive. So it's one thing to have very socialistic ideas that farmers, laborers,
everybody has to be treated very
but the
equally.
market
But the
doesn't
market
function
doesn't function like that.
So there are certain compromises you have to
You
make.
have to make. How much do you
5 minutes.
Okay.
There are certain
There are certain
compromises
compromises that you have to
that they felt
they have to make in engaging with the market. They felt
an
it was
insensitive
an
market,
insensitive market,
not
and they
being,
were not being
they were not able to
they were not able to
influence the terms
influence
of
the terms of
engagement
engagement between the market and the producers, and so they felt that
they were not
they were
able to
not able to
reconstruct
reconstruct a
the
new
social
social
reality.
reality. So
They
they
quit.
quit.
So now
So now
Malka is
Malka is
in the
in the
process of
process of
reinventing
reinventing
itself.
itself. We have
Abhishek here
Abhishek
has
here
been
who's been
working
working
on
on that,
and
and
trying to
trying to
see
see
how
how
to
to
build
build
other
other
kinds of
kinds of
relationships with
relationships
the
with the
market,
market,
which would
which would
allow for
allow
this
for this
product
product
to go into
go
the
into the
next 10
next 10
years. And
years.
it
And it
might be
might be about
organic, it
organic, it
might be
might be
about
about
garments, it
garments,
could go
it
into
could go into
the export
the
market.
export market.
We don't know
We
what.
don't know what it
So
will
the
do. It's
smaller
only
boutique
smaller
markets
boutique markets
value
that
this.
would value
So
this.
that's still an
So
open
that's still
question.
an open question what it will do.
But I think
But
really
I
what has
think
happened
really
is
what
that
has happened is that
the idea that
the
you
idea
can
that you
make
can
these
make these
reconnections
reconnections
and that they have to
and
be
that
they have to be
technical, they
social,
have to be social,
sustained
they have
over
to be
time.
sustained
I
over
think that is
time.
the kind
I
of
think
knowledge.
that is the kind of knowledge that we
And
need.
I think
And I think
now
now
recent
a recent
experiment, another
experiment,
young
another
colleague
young
called
colleague
Satish
called
has started.
Satish has started, is
He's
that he's
teaching,
teaching,
working with Bihari women,
Bihari women,
farmers' wives,
farmers' wives,
to
spin.
teaching them
He's
how to
teaching them
spin.
how to spin.
And
And
so he was
so he
asked,
was
so how
asked,
is
so
it
how is
to,
it
do
to
this? How is
do
it to
this?
teach
How is
these
it to
women how to
teach these
spin?
women how to spin?
And he said, yeah, they're
And he
enjoying
said,
it
yeah, they're enjoying
tremendously,
it
and now they're
tremendously,
coming
and now
out.
they're
So he
coming
started, he
out.
was
So he
very
started,
clever
he was
socially,
very
he
clever
started out with the
socially, started out with
mothers-in-law
the mothers-in-law
and got them on
got
board.
them on
These are
board.
women who
These
never
are
stepped
women who
out. So he
never
walked
stepped
into
out.
the
So he
village
walked
and
into
found
the
there were
village
no
and found
women
there
out.
were no women on the road.
And so he thought,
So he thought,
this is
this is
strange,
strange,
and then he
and
got
then he
going, and then
got going,
he had
and then
been
he
given
had
this
been
thing that
given this
he has
thing
to
that
do some
he has
income
to do
generation.
some income
Then
generation
he met
projects,
the
and then
older
he
women,
met the
got
older
the younger
women,
women on
got
board,
the younger women on
and
board,
within about a year,
and
he had
within about a
a
year,
bunch
he
of
had
25
at
women
least a bunch of
spinning,
25 women
and
spinning,
happily
and
riding about on
happily
bicycles and
riding
wearing
about on
lipstick,
bicycles and
and
wearing lipstick. And so this young feminist asked him, she said, so you're doing something really good. He said, yeah, but they weren't unhappy at home in the first place. They're happy to come out, but they weren't unhappy in the first place. So but they liked the social activity of being together and creating that community space.
and
And
he
he got
of
kind of
lambasted by
lambasted
this
by
woman
this woman
saying that,
saying that
you're
you're
not
not offering
offering them
them
proper
proper
wage, and
wage, and
so there is this discourse
there
that
is
women
this
have to
course
be
that women have to
liberated
be
in order to,
liberated in
and
order
this
to give,
creation
and
of
this
the
creation
social
of this
space somehow
social
is not
space somehow is not
enough.
enough.
But
But
because he's now
because he's
working
now
with
working with
Uzama, who's able to
Uzama, who's
go
able
there
to go there
and
and
validate what he
validate what
does,
he does,
he can
he can
continue his
continue his
experiment. And we're
experiment.
not
And
thinking
we are not
only in
thinking
terms of
only in terms of
economic
economic
outcomes, which
outcomes, which
anyway this
anyway this
talk was
talk
not
was not
about,
about,
also
but
about
also about
economic,
economic outcomes,
also
but
about
also
social.
about social outcomes.
And
And
it really
it
worked
really
well
worked
to
well to
create a new
create a new
generation
generation
to
of
think
people who will
differently
think
about
differently about craft,
craft.
taking
I'm going to
place.
stop
I
there.
need to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much
very much
for
for
perfect
perfect
timekeeping.
timekeeping.
So
So you see how this works.
15 minutes.
15 minutes, everybody. We have the discussion at the end.
And
And
when
when
I
I
ring
ring
this
this
bell,
bell,
it's
it's
not
not
for
for
the
you,
speaker.
it's for
There's
the
5
speaker.
minutes
There's
left.
five
So now
minutes
we
left.
come
So now
to
we come
Klaus
to
Staubermann,
Klaus Staubermann,
has
who
been
has been
who
who
is
is
the
the
chief
chief
executive
executive
officer
officer
of
of
that
ICOM,
stands for
that
the
stands for the
International
International
Council
Council
of
of
Germany.
Museums in Germany.
And he holds a PhD
And he
from
holds a
the
PhD from
University of
the
Cambridge.
University of
Previously, he was
Cambridge.
chief curator
Previously, he
of
was chief
technology
curator of
at the
technology
museums
at the
in
National
Scotland.
Museums in Scotland, in Edinburgh.
Please,
Please,
I think I have
Klaus,
to give you
and
the
I
mic.
think I have to give you the mic, right?
Turn this on. I'll just pull this. Yeah, okay. So, hello everyone, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak here today, especially the organizers of the very successful winter school. This is now day number 3, and I'm deeply intrigued by the energy and the knowledge of the students we are working with.
The students in
The
the room
students
would
in
have
the room
seen
would have seen
Annapurna and
Annapurna and
myself
myself
speaking
speaking
before. So
before.
Annapurna
So
and I
Annapurna and I
decided
decided
we
we
switch
switch
roles
roles
this
this
time
time
to make this a
to
little more
make this a little
interesting
more
for you
interesting for you
guys.
guys.
So she
So
spoke
she
about
spoke about
reconstruction,
reconstructions, about which I've been
speaking extensively in the past 2 days, and I'm going to speak about textiles. Not that I know much about textiles, but I thought I give you a bit of a perspective from my story, and this is why it's such a National Museum of Scotland. I started in Scotland, where I was technology curator some years back, about 2 years ago, and I worked with two very dear colleagues of mine, Anita Quay, who's a textile conservator at Glasgow University, and Dan Coughlin, Irish weaver. And we together tried to explore Scottish weaving culture, and I'm going to talk a little about this now. What you see on the left is what I, as a curator, would find in my collection. Enormous amounts of weaving machinery in storage. Dead in many ways as in not working or being used anymore. Some preserved. What you see to the right is what at the time was a living textile culture in Scotland. Scotland was at some point one of the workshops of the empire. Enormous amounts of textiles got produced here. It's still very much a culture that is in the memory of people. You meet old women these days who still very vividly remember how they used to work in the mills as little girls. And our idea, Anita, Dan, and my idea was to bring these cultures together, the dead object and the living memory. We set out in very practical terms, and I keep this practical because there's some budding academics in the audience. I mean, our winter school students will have to write at some point research proposals. I'm going to talk a little about the practicalities of this. We figured we can't do this alone, the three of us. We need support. We need expert support to generate a loose network of colleagues who were able to contribute to our work. And these were active textile designers, curators who represented areas related to textile making, archivists and practitioners. We applied to the Royal Society of Edinburgh for a grant that would allow us to do 3 expert events and 1 public event. And the public event is, of course, important because it's living history. We started from the materials. And here you see one of my former PhD students looking at this particular case, Turkey red is one of these colors you can't possibly not look in Scotland because it was such a big part of the late 19th, early 20th century textile enterprise. We looked at patterns, we looked at materials, and we brought a good number of people together from master students who were doing history of art to curators to archivists. We got everyone to talk. That was the first one. It was starting point, a learning exercise for everyone. And to me in particular, very pleasing because you never know how people respond when you put them together in the same room. Chemistry needs to work somehow, especially if you come from very different disciplines. In this case, it just worked a treat. So we decided we do a second workshop, and this was about techniques. And techniques we decided needed to have 2 aspects, the material and the immaterial. The material are the machines. That's where prehistoric techniques got embedded. Skills and knowledge was mechanized and turned into machine knowledge. And at the same time, the techniques. And to the right, you see my dear colleague, Dan Coughlin. He's a weaver by training. I'm very pleased to say he's now found himself slightly as a textile curator in Paisley, at Paisley Museum. And we did demonstrations. And in this particular case, on the galleries of the National Museum in Scotland. That's a museum which get about 2 million visitors a year. So when you do this on the public galleries, you do get some attention. In this particular case, it wasn't meant as a publication exercise. We did it as a way to understand historic skills and practices about handloom. Then is part of the living culture of weaving. It's not just about making historic skills. He was also singing on the galleries and singing meant what the singing meant to the weavers. It was, for example, a way both to stay motivated, but also to tune into synchronize when you work together. We had a third workshop, and in many ways I felt this was the most important because that's the most easily overlooked. We tend to look at materials, we tend to look at looms, and you do tend to look at historic practices. There's a very strong environmental component about where you set up a workshop, how you operate the machine, etc. The quality of work pieces is affected by the environment. Very much depends on the work in a humid place, in a cold place, but also you have access to power. If you have water, you can run a mill. If you don't have continuous water supply, you're stuck with manual, unless of course later on you get electricity. So these are some of the environments we explored. Most museums with energy machinery, but also exploring smaller machines and looking at various ways. We were using and powering them, and again you get the active textile designer with the energy curator and the living practitioner. In this particular case, the gentleman was a maintenance man for weaving looms and travel around Scotland and fix looms if needed. Most important to us was the public event we had. As I said, still a large number of now elderly who remember working in these industries and these workshops. And we presented the results of what we had as an expert network created among ourselves to them, and we asked them to challenge. And so they did. It was very friendly, but it was also very critical. We chose a place intentionally that was not your standard university museum place. We went into a socially very challenged area of glass. Crime is very high. This is where we felt we have to get people on board. Go to the people, wait for the people to come to you. We carefully evaluated and we returned to the various aspects and examined. We returned to the pattern books, the original textile design. We learned lessons in areas we hadn't expected. Learning, for example, how we draw punch cards for jacket looms, which is a very interesting exercise also in terms of division of labor in Scotland. And we felt at this point there was potential for more. We felt that somehow, in some way, we wanted not a legacy, continuously the insights we had gained. This particular insight was the one I benefited from because as a technology curator at the time, I was redesigning the technology galleries at National Museum Scotland. I only recommend should you ever be in Edinburgh and visit. And we did something which was still unorthodox in museums. We are the design gallery and the textile and engineering galleries next to each other. Traditionally, in separate areas, you have an art and design area, and you would have a science and technology area, but we connected them. Not only connected with us by physically, but also in terms of stories and narratives we tell. So this is not just showcasing textile designs, it's about making textiles, and you learn about how textiles are designed and made both past and present. At the same time, set up textile machinery, but we wanted to get the process to life. So what we did is we trained artists. 5 minutes. Thank you, sir. So we trained artists, actors in this case, to work with us, reanimating some of the skills and do the narrative, the storytelling you would have had on these galleries. This is picture hours. The galleries are open. It's a very busy area. And you get someone sitting here on the stool talking about, in this particular case, jacket silk weaving in Scotland in the late 19th century. I'm
I'm
closing
with
with
a
a
more academic
follow-on
follow-on
project
project
because the Royal
because the Royal
Society
Society
really
really
liked
liked
us for
us for
some
some
reason. I
reason. I
think
think
it
it
was
was
because
because
we
we
did
did
something
something
really
really
unorthodox
unorthodox
and
and
different and
different and
new.
new.
But also we had invited the president of the Royal Society of Edinburgh to our public event in Glasgow. And he said he had never been invited by any of his research students before. So he was damn pleased. So we said, do come back. So we did. And we set out a project, and this is where I'm going to end, Where we
where we
recreated
recreated
the 19th
19th
century
century
textile dye
textile dye
making
making of the
and that
time.
was
And that
done
was
not
done
only
not only because we wanted to understand the
processes,
processes,
because
but
also as
because also as
historians we felt
historians we
there was a
felt
lot of
there was a
myths
lot of
about
myths about what was going on in textile
in the
materials
19th
in the
century.
19th century.
There is a
There is a
narrative,
narrative, or there was a narrative before we rewrote it,
about
about
organic
organic
materials being
materials being
replaced by
replaced by synthetic
materials.
materials. There was a narrative about
Manual
manual
work
work
being
being
replaced
replaced by
by industrial
industrial
labor
labor
and
and
such.
such.
History is much
History is
more
much more
complex, and we
complex,
set
and we
out to
set out
reinvestigate,
to reinvestigate, and we
rediscovered
rediscovered
processes,
the
but also the broader
processes, but also
culture
the
of
broader
19th
culture
century
of 19th
textile
century
dyes in
textile
Scotland.
dyes in
This is
Scotland.
very much
And this is
where
very much where
Annapurna
Annapurna and I met and got to talk, and that's why we're here in
this
this
is where
afternoon.
they
So
thank
this is
you
where
and
I thank you
hand over
and
to the
hand
next
over
speaker.
to the next speaker.
Okay, thank you very much, Klaus.
Thank you very much, Klaus. And also thank you very much for, again, excellent timekeeping. That's what I'm very responsible for here. So now I would like to ask the next speaker, Sarita Sundar. She's an artist and designer. She's also the founder of Hanno, a heritage interpretation and design consultancy in Bangalore here. And she holds a degree from the University of Leicester. I think a master's degree from the University of Leicester. Please, Sarita, your presentation.
No, you can use this.
Use this as well.
You can also use.
I'm okay with this as long as everyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I'm neither an archivist or an historian. It's sort of odd. So, yeah, as I was saying, I'm neither an archivist nor a historian, so it's sort of odd that I'm here speaking. But I think one of the reasons possibly is that I, for some obscure reason, always gravitated towards archivists and historians. And a couple of them are here in Vrinda. And I have also kind of enjoyed pieces like the discussion this afternoon in the morning. My heart sort of started pumping a bit, looking at things that are great or does great. And primarily I've sort of worked in the area of giving objects voices for both museums or heritage spaces. For instance, we got the British Archives looking at making sort of objects that are fairly insignificant, giving them a voice. Hello? Better. Okay. And but I've always found there were some things that I found were problematic about the way in which objects were integrated in the museums. They were either choices were made on the basis of things either being very monumental or aesthetically of some value. At some point I decided that I should sort of step back a bit and understand a little bit more about what these
What I'm
things
sort
are.
of going to talk to you
And
today
what I'm sort
about
of going to
is
talk to you today about is a research project that I've done along with the India Foundation for the Arts, and
sort of coincided that a lot of those
also
studies
sort of
also
coincided that a lot of those studies also
project that I did at
worked along with
University of
the
Leicester.
project that I did
What
at
I
I was looking at is a system of objects in ritual performances in a village fest. And I was looking at it at a village performance that was from my village in Kerala. But at the same time, trying to sort of look at how these objects would change, how they would take character, how they would have agency. And my particular interest really was to sort of see how notions of identity were empowered by these objects, and how that evolution would happen through both time and space. So this is a village festival in Kerala, pretty much like you would see anywhere actually in the world, and we are going to continue studying this in the context of certain European festivals in Barcelona as well. But what really interested me was that these were very, very spectacular festivals, and I was looking primarily at two sort of things that I'm looking at. One is this festival in this village center, and what happens is that these are from the distant past, there are folk performances, and there is some quality of an aesthetic quality to it, or at least monumental quality, which would give them a name of belonging to heritage, the space of heritage. The other study that I was looking at is a much more popular contemporary ritual performance in the spaces of, say, political processions that happen in Bangalore. I was trying to see how objects from a space like a village festival move towards something like a political procession. So I'm just going to run you through some of these images. These are very, very large, as you can see, motorized models of cattle. And there are a number of various elements that are part of this festival. So there is a marginalized community, and it's the one time of the year that
it's the one time of the year that they can actually come out and bless the rest of the village. So it's very, very grand. It's sort of Baroque-like in the sense there are costumes, folk music, there's dance, there's very, very spectacular.
But what my interest really was, what happened was that even though I'm from the village and lived there were a lot of objects that had certain codes. There was a certain code in place which I myself did not understand. And it took a lot of sort of understanding to sort of questioning to understand what these were. These were perfectly understood by most people. So the system of objects that I was looking at, there are 10 of them. I'm just going to show a few of them. What were the objects that make up time marker? So one was the flag going up. Immediately the flag went up 15 days before the festival. Everyone in the village knew that festival can start. The other thing was the drumming that would start at 6 in the morning. Then you know that that's the day. And these were things that were sort of underwritten. Earlier, having this discussion about whether it is interested as objects as material objects or objects as my interest was also to look at objects not as material objects, but also as instances. And that actually came about when I asked a friend of mine from the village, so what object do you think is most significant about this village? And she did not give me an answer. Instead, she said, when I see the performers come down the paddy field, or when I hear the sound, that was an object. That's when I started looking at objects that are not objects, but they were things in a sense. And also to try and understand what were the codes behind it. Rhythm and music is obviously one of the things that one naturally looks at in any sort of performance. That was one. The other odd object or sort of system that I was looking at was that objects that acted as intermediaries in the contact. So in a festival like this, when the community comes and blesses the rest of the village, often they'd come to the house and these grains were kept out and grain was given and the community comes and blesses. Today, most of the people in the community are no longer interested in the grain. They're fairly well off, they're doing okay. But the ceremony or the ritual continues, the custom continues. And I think that continues because of these objects being in place. These objects are there, so therefore they act as some sort of a vehicle in which to continue the relationship
relationship between people.
And in a
And
sense, you
in a
sort of
sense, you sort
understand
of
that social
understand that
networks
social networks are not just between people, but they're between people sort of aided through the objects.
So there are a set
So
of
there are a set of
objects
objects like that here.
The other
The
thing
other
that I
thing that I
started
started
looking at
looking
is
at is
how these
how these
objects
objects
change
change
within
within
the
the
festival.
festival itself. So,
For
for
instance,
instance, on the left, you see
one of the community
members
members
still sort of uses
cloth,
this cloth,
cattle
cattle
made
made
out
out
of
of
cloth.
cloth.
But
But
soon what
soon
happened
what
is
happened
that
is
a lot of
that a lot of
fiberglass, so they
fiberglass,
kind
so
of
they kind of
exist side by
exist
side.
side by side.
But
But
what
what
happens
happens
as
as
a
a
result
result
of
of
that
that
is
is
that
that
a
a
particular
particular
village
village
might
might
have
have
a
a
particular
particular
unique
unique
way
way
of
of
devising or
devising or
creating
creating that particular sort of
cattle
cattle
form.
form.
But now
But
with
now with
this
this
standardization, you
standardization,
see
you
these
see
in
these
any
in any
village
village
within
within
50
50
or
or 20
radius.
kilometer radius.
Then there
Then
are
there
sort
are
of
sort
objects,
of
and in this case
objects.
it's
In
really
this
not
case,
an
it's
object,
really
it's
not
a
an
sort of
object, it's
paddy
a sort
field.
of
What I'm
paddy
saying is
field.
that
What I'm saying
usually
is
it's
that
only during
usually
the
it's
dry
only
spell
during
that
the
the
dry
paddy field
spell that the
becomes
paddy
open
field
for
becomes open
negotiation
for
to become
negotiation
sort
to
of an
become
arena
a
for
sort
a
of an
festival.
arena for a festival of
So
this
if you
nature.
see on the
So
left, you
if you
see
see on
all
the
the,
left, you see all the,
area when it's fully
area
flooded, you
when
can't
it's
do
fully
anything. When
flooded, you can't
it's
do
green
anything.
and
When it's
there's
sort of green and
agriculture, you
there's
can't. It's only
agriculture,
during
you
that
can't.
dry
It's
period.
only during that dry period
So in
that
a sense, there
happens.
are a lot of
So in a
objects
sense,
that
there are a
help
lot
to
of objects
participate
that
that
help to
sort of
participate that
cyclicity.
sort of
There is that sense
cyclicity.
that
There is that
once
sense
it's
that
dry,
once
we
it's
come out,
dry, we
all
come
the
out,
colors are
all
out
the
on the
colors are
field.
out on the field, and
It
there
was
is
a time for
it was a
not just
time for not
celebration, but
just
also a
celebration,
time for
but
sort
also a
of
time for sort of
reinforcing that this
reinforcing that
cyclicity
this
will
cyclicity will continue of
seasons
seasons
or
or
ups and
ups and
downs in
downs in
life.
life, so to say.
There are
There are
also these
also these
objects that
objects that
sort
sort
of
of
help
help
in
in
creating that
creating that
sense of
sense
the
of the
spectacular.
spectacular. And I
In
think
anywhere in the
anywhere in the
world, we are
world, we are
looking for the
looking for the
spectacular. We're
spectacular.
looking
We're
for
looking
things
for
that
things that
sort
sort
of
of in
Indian sort of
Indian
sense,
sense,
Adbhuta.
Adbhuta.
And there's
There is
that
that
need
need
for
for
having
having that sense of
wonder.
of wonder.
And all of this
And all
happens
of
at the
this
same
happens at the
time. You
same
can't
time.
rest
You
your
can't rest your
eye.
eye at one point or the other.
The elephants are
The
out,
elephants are
and
out,
also there
and
is a
also
sense of
there is
sort
a
of
sense of
there's
sort of
a lot
there's
of
a lot
if
of
you
if
have
you
immersed, and
sort of
I've
immerse,
been
and
there
I've
at least
been
8
there
times
at
over the
least
last
8
8
times
years
over
or
the
so.
last 8 years
Every
or so.
time you go, you
Every
can
time
see
you
there's an
go, you can
increase
see there's an increase
in
in
elephants.
the
There's
number
this
of
sort of
elephants. There's this
need
sort
to sort
of
of
need to sort of
say that okay, this
say
year
that
we are
okay, this
getting
year we are
bigger.
getting
There is a
bigger. So there
sense
is a
of
sense of
not just an
not
identity,
just
a
an
sense of an
identity, a sense of
assertion
an assertion
that
that
happens in
happens
these
in these
spaces.
spaces.
Now I'm going to
Now
jump
I'm
to
going to
the
jump
next
to the
study,
next
which
study,
is
which
the
is the
looking
looking
at
at
Ambedkar
the
Jayanti
Ambedkar
celebrations
Jayanti
that I
celebrations
recorded
that
in
I
Shantinaka.
recorded in Shantinaka.
And
And
so when I was looking
so
at
when I
these
was looking at
codes,
these codes,
I realized
I
that
realized that
rather sort of oddly enough, there was a
similar
similar
sense of a
need
need
for
for
a
a
spectacle.
spectacular. Now,
For
for
those
those
of
of
you
you
who
who
know,
don't
the
know, the
Ambedkar Jayanti
Ambedkar Jayanti
celebrations
celebrations
happen
happen around
around April
April
14th.
14th. 14th, right? Yeah.
And
And
what I
what I
noticed
noticed was that
there were very, very similar sort of codes that were in place. Of course, you can't get elephants out, but there were other things that came out. There was a sort of codification of the same similar sort of religious puja that was done, and that in itself is a very, very odd thing when you consider that Ambedkar, in all possibilities, even though he sort of converted to Buddhism, was a rationalist. It's rather odd that you use religious symbols and or sort of signifiers that are religious to sort of commemorate his. The floats come out of a different nature, but in as much a way that they also start taking over the streets in the same way that they, in the previous example, you see the village being taken over and there's a certain assertion. There's a celebration, but there's also a certain sense of apprehension that happens in all of this. So that you can notice by the presence of policemen that sort of are around in music. In fact, Bordeaux sort of
fully submerged with water, and sometimes you have to cross one room to other with the help of boat. On that some places, bicycle is not essential. That out is but the upper stacks are missing here in 11th century, that stone carvings.
Is it? Yes. So, after 12th century, maybe we have added those 4 or 5 planks. So, it takes a long time to add one plank. At least 200 years to fit one plank. It's not at all easy. It's a trial and error. And now, today's boat, Bhattacharyya. Amazing. That is the drawing of the boat. These are all traditional technology. They put it in that way, different structures to erect the central plank. Then they measure it in different ways with the help of limb, with the help of finger. They call it 1 half, 2 half, and big da, in that way. They put planks in that way. It's called reverse clinker technology. And that is the boat. So at least from 12th century to present day, I can tell about the history of a boat building. At least of that time, last 800 years, we have developed in that way. We have another kind of boat, it's called smooth skin boat, and that one is overlap planking. We know that kind of fastening. Here, it's in a sail. It's in Ajanta cave painting. The two planks are made in that way. Similar kind of stapling method is still prevalent in Bengal. These are the double-ended nail. We know in Scandinavia that kind of planking called hulk planking, where planks are moved parallelly and are accumulated in the stem and stern portion. That is the medieval technology, medieval Scandinavian hulk planking, H-U-L-H, that is. Our Bhattacharyya is similarly, just the same hulk planking. Our dinghy, this is also the same. All are parallel planking. All are marching towards the same. So I'm talking about these are the technology. If you look into the present boats, you can really identify and you can reconstruct your maritime technological history through present boats. It's the plantain ramp still we are using. We are propelling it with the help of hand. It's another Kachamaram in Tamil Nadu coast. But nowadays we know that due to money and other things, they are replacing it with fiberglass boat. So we are rapidly changing. We do not know after maybe 10 or 15 years, 42. So it's the high time to all those traditional knowledge to reconstruct our own maritime past. We have the simple boats in Subarnarekha, it's called dinghy, Subarnarekha dinghy. Unfortunate that we know these are the rivers, and our planners are putting several dams to obstruct the natural water flow. So we are losing our boats. We know at least more than 5,000 large dams are here in India, according to the Central Water Commission report. Height means the height of the dam is from the lowest foundation level, 15 meters above the deepest foundation level. So those are all high, big dams, large dams. So instead of safeguarding our natural river, we are destroying our natural water drainage system and natural water resource. We know that this is the boat, and they anchored it on the shore because they know at the time of high tide it will be out of danger. But when we are putting those boulders to beautify our shore, so after a few years, they will not be able to keep their boat in the shore because at high tide, that boat will stuck here. So we are deliberately destroying our natural resource. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can just stay up there. I would like to thank you very much for this, also bringing the environmental issues in. So can I please ask the panelists to come up? And we will have another half hour, I think, or almost half an hour for this. So now it's up to you. So far, you're sitting there listening. I would like to open the floor for questions, comments. Please. I mean, obviously, I can start. Nobody else. Oh yeah, thank you.
Sarita, you just started to talk about sort of imagination of the object. Could you just sort of elaborate a little bit more? When I saw a few notes where you were talking about your imagination of the object as being an intermediary in cycles and the object as markers. I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit about what this larger thesis is. Where do you see this placing?
So when I was looking at the object or object thing, or not necessarily a material object, I was in sort of there was sort of two parts of it. One was that I have an interest in material culture, so I do enjoy the materiality of an object. And then I was sort of faced with the idea that these are not necessarily material things that one should be looking for, especially in spaces like this.
But at the same time, there obviously there is a need for
the
material or for the intangible
to be given some sort of a substance.
And that's
where
these
these objects became useful as vehicles for transmitting ideas or notions of ideas.
But also of sort of assertion in a sense, and in some way transferring narratives, stories from within communities or communities that have either moved away from
spaces like from sort of rural areas to urban areas.
In a sense,
I was finding that these objects worked as
some sort
of a storytelling vehicle in order to sort of move from past to present or from different across time and space, so to speak. I don't know if that sort of. But also, I think there's a certain anchoring of emotions that happens, which these objects engender, because the minute you have either the spectacularness of it, because it is something that's made spectacular, there is an anchoring of emotions that can happen through that.
Okay.
Hi.
Thank you all. These kind of questions, but while listening to all of you,
Annapurna, the whole Malka story,
I was thinking about
how we are preserving some objects, and also when we talk about possibly when we talk about museums or objects and documenting them, it's also because lived reality has changed.
So the weaving that happens with the consumers, right? It was before a village community or a different set of people who used it, and now we have a different set of people using it. And with the both, it's quite stark. I mean, it's we are documenting something that is disappearing. So I mean, I guess my question very broadly is, when do we document things that are dying? So we document them because we just want to capture that snapshot of the past. And how do we think about living exhibits? I suppose things that we capture that then we recreate or then we reuse in the present.
Okay. Is there anybody who want to take that one? Yeah. I mean, obviously I could say something to that as well, but I should leave it to the panelists.
Actually, you asked a question, something that's always been of concern for me, and that's practically primarily why I sort of was looking at performances when I went to a museum. And whenever I've gone to a museum, I've seen a mask being put out there. I've always had a problem with this sort of staticness with which they are displayed, for one, especially, and particularly when I've sort of watched shadow puppet performance in a village. And you go and see how that puppet is sort of displayed in a museum. It's sort of fused between glass, making it so static, and there is absolutely no life. And obviously, and I had that experience when I was visiting. I had attended a puppet performance in a village, and was completely enamored. It was like, this is epiphany for me, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I want one puppet. I asked the performer to make me a puppet. I bring it back home, or I ask him to make it for me. It comes to me by courier, I unroll it. And then when I opened it, there was absolutely nothing in that very, very material quality of the puppet to give me a sense of that memory of having been there. And then I realized that possibly the little video that I took on my phone was a better capture of that memory than that beautiful. It was a lovely puppet, but I actually gave it away because I felt it had no way signified livingness or the life of that experience.
Yeah. Thank you. Documenting this history itself is a continuous process, of course. So it should go hand in hand with the living history. If you do it when the living history begins to die, it's usually too late. So start as early as you can, work with practitioners, witnesses. Museums do have a responsibility to capture this history as much as they can, and have to work into the future to think how they plan to capture history. Of course, when you go into some museums, you realize that they aren't particularly good at it. They always start acting when it's too late. They select what there is left, and the way it's presented is not very animated. It gets worse when you work in a museum. We work in a culture where heritage is often intangible, because then they're not material witnesses, no living witnesses, no material witnesses, and of course no documentation. That means you need a different and new type of museum. You need not the museum in the traditional sense where the so-called curator has things on walls and to be appreciated by the public. But you need museums that are driven by the public and by future audiences. So if you want to be a good museum, in my sense, you do audience research, find out what the public wants to see. You capture it, you document it, and of course you do this with the public, for the public, so by the public, with the public, for the public. There's still a long way to go, and you can't blame museums necessarily for the lack of resources are extremely limited. Look at economies, industries are top, public sector is usually at the bottom when you look at public sector funding. Necessarily hospitals, schools are first, cultures, trades at the end. They have to do a lot of things with very little resources. But there's also ways ways, of course, to very proactively go out and, for example, develop documentation projects. And good examples, I mean, of how this can be done.
I started work in 1997. Till 2004, there was some boats which carry a huge amount of straw from Sundarban to Kolkata. After 2006, that boat disappeared. That means we do not need, the Kolkata people do not need any straw. So all those small amounts of straw they used to carry through road. So that kind of boat is called Khora Kasti. Khora means straw. Kasti is an Arabic term. And if you look into that boat, it's a skeleton-built boat. It's not a familiar boat of that region. I think that is the boat of Tamrolipto. Yeah, maybe 1,000 years old technology. So we are not losing that technology because that boat is only can carry straw. So nowadays you will not get any Khorokiste. So it's unfortunate that you will not get that technology to build any kind of such boat.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
Thank you for these wonderful presentations. My question is for all the panelists, but it sort of connects back to the moderator's introduction, is to really understand what is object versus what is a thing to a historian or a curator. Because we literally saw multi-disciplinary narratives that came out of your works, environmental, Western livelihood. There's this pressure on history in general to try and connect dots between multiple narratives. Then which object tells and which object doesn't? So what is the object and what is a thing? How did you go about identifying these in your processes?
Yeah. Anybody wants to? I think you had something in your talk about that actually it's not that easy. It's the social, actually the objects play a very important role in the social relations that I find very interesting. And if you leave out the objects, actually there is kind of, we have like a sociology of hot objects, right? And yeah. Okay. Do you want to think about what? You want to?
I should try to zoom out a little because, as you know, the theme of current winter school is public life of objects. And needless to say, for the last 3 days, we're busy ourselves with figure out what is public, what is life, and what is an object. If it would be that easy. I think public-private is still the easiest here. And the object, of course, can be an epistemic object, can be material object, it can be an object of knowledge. We treat in museums objects of knowledge as bearers of knowledge. They emerge from context, they need to be embedded in these contexts, and they need to be displayed in these contexts. It's as we figured in the winter school, there are multiple narratives where objects can become actors by themselves. Gender, race, there's gender, there's race, there's a colonial history. But there are also entertaining stories. I mean, stories made as kids found out when we visited the science and technology. It's a curator's responsibility, as it is the historian's responsibility, to keep these objects alive, or if they are on the risk of being dead, bring them back to life. But it's highly contextual, and I say this because that gives me an excuse to move the microphone to much more to say about it.
I think at least what I did when I was looking, I set out looking for material objects. For the first months or so when I tried to, I wasn't getting anywhere. And that's when I sort of decided to take a switch and said, okay, I'm not going to look for material objects, things, but rather look for what makes
say the
helps
festival in this
in
case, and what
transmitting
helps in transmitting these notions of identity, or worked in ways of talking about
transmitters of even memory within a community. And once I sort of looked at that as a way in, I found taking more abstract. I only presented 4 or 5 of the 10 systems that I looked at. So rhythm was an easy one, and rhythm is very easily attached to materiality. But it was also
something to do with audio, oral ideas.
So rhythm, for instance,
so rhythm, for instance,
there
was
are
one.
other things.
There are other things. For instance, when I was working with Brinda on the Godrej archives, one of the objects that we presented was a smell from a 100-year-old soap, and we kind of helped create it, and you kind of put it in a vial in the museum at Godrej. And once you open it, for me at least, I remember when we tested and opened it, it sort of immediately gave me a memory of my great aunt hugging synthol smell. It suddenly
not very pleasant,
but still it was there. But
triggers of
memory are various things, and some say that smell is one of the strongest triggers. I mean, taste is another one. So, and we often sort of disregard the idea of an object as a thing. In fact, I was just thinking about
putting together
a few other things that make up an object and what decides.
So I was
asking my sister-in-law about a recipe.
Not even a recipe.
Not even a recipe book. Sometimes the recipe itself is a thing. So, you know,
and it is a
transmitter.
It helps to carry on traditions,
say within a family or within a community.
So I think at least that was
one way of doing it. Where I started looking at other concepts, the idea of what makes
things spectacular in
a festival, and how that sort of carries forward.
Actually, the thing about when we're working with craftspeople, the thing that's most visible is the object. I mean, the thing that they make. And so you're constantly focusing on that product, actually. For whatever reasons, because you have to sell it, or you have to make it, or it has to be like this, that, or the other. But I think that for most people who are working with craftspeople, what you see is that's the thing that the craftsperson lets go of the most easily. Because once it's out of the loom, it's not theirs, it's gone, and you have to make the next one. So I think I wouldn't talk about so much material objects as material knowledge, because it's about the making of it and its use. That is something that we are trying to keep relevant.
Another question
from the back.
Thanks for the talk.
I have a question.
Relationship between
society,
math, technology.
So
far, most of the technologies that we have, I mean, panelists were discussing were mostly embedded a lot in communities. Most of these technologies were co-created or co-evolved by from the community itself. So panelists constantly use the word embeddedness at multiple places. So the question I want to ask is, when we look at our current economic scenario, current economic order that we have evolved over the past 100 years.
We have even a free market system
where
globalization is happening in every front.
Is happening
technology
in every front,
I mean,
and
technology market is dictating.
I mean, currently market is dictating, or it is acting as an incentive towards the production of technology. In a lot of ways, a lot of scholars have argued that we have the technology, society, and market have got disembedded from the real world scenario. So I have two questions. So my question is, are we able to tell? I mean, our future generation would be able to tell us a good story, the current history, using the technology that we have produced at this point of history. Uh, uh, go about disembed back to the social reality that we have at present. Thanks.
Okay. Is our current technology so different from our past? I don't know. Who wants to take this? Who wants to take this? Klaus, yeah. Obviously, it's not my role really to take the question. So.
There's a question in the history of technology. The question is technology driving history, or is history driving technology? And if it's not one of the two, who is driving what? You can claim that history to technology to an extent is invention driven. There's always a personal element of this in it, but of course the technology is also, as you say, economically driven. It can benefit. You get to see, for example, when we in Scotland redesigned our science and technology galleries, we had to do fundraising, £15 million in about 2 years. And you would think that was in 2008. The timing was bad because Scotland got severely hit by the economic crisis, plus the oil price had gone down. So it was that marked the end of the Scottish oil enterprise. So there was a huge lack of public funding and money in general. But everyone felt at the time that in order to get out of that situation, you have to build technically minded people. You have to move away from financial services. You have to move away from the service industries. You have to teach people to do stuff. And this is what made it easy for us to do fundraising for our new galleries. Because the idea was that we would inspire, especially young people who were in critical points of their careers, I mean, school, university, to decide to become scientists, engineers, or related professions. So what I'm saying that yes, technology. So what I'm saying that yes, technology, as in any other sector, is economically the advantage or the disadvantage. And having said that, I pass it now on to Annapurna because she's active. Having said that, I pass it now on to Annapurna.
I think this question of embeddedness and values and the divergence that seems to be happening between the technology that's driven by science and the so-called community-led. I think that dichotomy is also something that we have to examine carefully, because what I've learned from working with handloom weavers is that the handloom weaver, his or her strength is that they can work in a very system where they know the weaver and somebody comes buys from their house. At the same time, they're able to link through very carefully thought out strategic interventions to very large systems also. So, for example, if you have to deal with things like standardization or scaling, they have found their ways to do that. For example, you use color. Normally, you just in one loom produces 12 meters in the same way. But if you have 200 weavers producing it, the same fabric, just find a dye house that can do the same thing. So they come up with these ways. So this, and if you go into any large technology system, you'll find one person there very carefully crafting that technology. So in a sense, I think this dichotomy between the two is a little made up. And it's true that economy will drive. It's not by chance.
It's not by chance that people who are thinking longer term or who are working against the flow of economy basically don't make money.
Live with that, you get
live with that. You'll get that.
Anybody else? Yeah, I mean, there's obviously, I mean, we can talk about specificity, and obviously our time is different from other time, and we have to look at this specificity, and we can talk about these kind of large technological systems. At the same time, me working at IIT Madras, having an archivist, my archivist is an anthropologist, right? And I say that's fitting because actually the IIT community is in many ways not very different from any other kind of tribal community we're having around, right? So we are all obviously living in the same world.
We are all obviously living in the same world, but at the same time, I wouldn't say no. There's actually something very specific, and some of the points you've brought about large corporations, and
so we can talk about,
right?
Like
what is specific
our time, but also what is
about our time, but also what is specific about our places, right? Like what's still very specific about
India, right? Like
doing things
in
India, right? Like, but then also where
I think we have to come to an
I think we have to come to an end. Actually, I don't know. There's one more question. Should we just?
Because obviously,
food and drink is always very important here, and
they will shut down.
They will shut down. So you rather want to have tea before you don't get any. Okay, is that acceptable? Okay, so I give it to Venka to close the.
On behalf of the organizers, I'd request Indira to give a small token of appreciation for you guys being here, and to all of you also for being here, and for those of you in the Wittje School, we hope to see you tomorrow.
You guys
can show these books to the audience so they can see what that is, because they're just wondering what's that.
Thank you so much for coming in, guys. There's going to be outside. Neha can tell you where it is. And also, I can just put a plug in. We are having a public lecture for the archives this month on Friday, day after tomorrow. So I hope you're able to come by. It's a new exhibition, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So,
this month on Friday, day after tomorrow. So come back.
Wittje School participants tomorrow morning get to HMT Factory. Thank you.